It is an obligation on us to get to the bottom of this.
Taxpayers Federation has come up with call that corporate welfare. My mind is that your plan is also corporate welfare. On the other side of the coin, U4 has said $1 billion is not enough, and especially in comparison to the dairy industry, where the cabinet has approved $4.3 billion as compensation and not yet approved $1 billion for the auto sector. So what's the balance here? What is needed and what is the key reason for it?
Well, you know, when I went to law school, we were told that the best form of evidence is an admission. So what Stephen Harper's doing there is that he's admitting that he's going to be killing off tens of thousands of jobs in the auto sector. He's just admitted it by talking about that sort of compensation. And on the compensation itself, actions speak louder than words. Look at the history of Stephen Harper. To get Newfoundland and Labrador to sign the European trade deal, he promised hundreds of millions of dollars of compensation for Newfoundland and Labrador if they were to give up the minimum processing requirement. It's a very basic thing that we should all be doing with our natural resources, is adding value-added jobs here, right? We should be doing the processing, the upgrading, the refining of our natural resources instead of shipping them off wrong. So Newfoundland and Labrador got it right. Mr. Harper wanted them to give that up. They agreed. They gave it up. And you know what happened after? Stephen Harper broke his promise to Newfoundland and Labrador. That's shameful. Everybody who's being told now that there's going to be billions of dollars for compensation for the dairy farmers who are going to be losing a lot of their livelihood, for the tens of thousands of Canadians with good paying jobs in the auto sector, they're being told that there might be compensation. Don't trust Stephen Harper on this any more than you trust him on anything else. I know that.
About TPP specifically on...
Ne vous en faites pas, Tamara, je reviens à vous tout à fait. Go ahead. Go ahead, yeah. Go ahead.
Okay, so on TPP, on drugs in particular, if you don't mind.
Yes.
I'd like you to clarify for me what the situation is that you're complaining about in regards to Canada's position of TPP. I understand that you have some concerns about Australia's ability to hang on to a 5-year term for the protection of patents, but Canada's is longer than that. Correct me if I'm wrong. If you could take me through this and where your concerns lay with it.
Sure. A lot of the generic prescription drugs are made in other countries. By changing the time period for which they're going to be protected, it's going to become more expensive for Canadians to access generic prescription drugs. That is adding to the cost of medication for Canadians, where at a time when we should be taking concrete action to reduce the cost of medication. That's another good reason to vote against Stephen Harper's secret Trans-Pacific Partnership.
So just to follow up on that, what's your understanding of the difference between the CETA agreement and how it handles the question of generics and patent protection for drugs, and what's available to Canada under the TPP? Because I understand those numbers are in fact the same. They're both at 8 years, so there's been no concession in the TPP compared to CETA.
No, don't forget, what we're talking about today is the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and the fact that Stephen Harper negotiated that in secret. We're no further ahead with regard to the CETA, as you know, because Mr. Harper, despite having announced it 6 times so far, still hasn't got a deal, because a lot of the countries in Europe, whether it's France, or the Netherlands, or Germany, or Austria, have the same types of concerns that we've been expressing, especially with regard to the investor-state provisions. These are issues that involve sovereign states. I want to make sure that as Prime Minister of Canada, I can take the decisions to defend the health of Canadians and to defend the environment in this country. I don't want to give that up to some vague, unknown international panel.
Vous savez que les Montréalais sont extrêmement inquiets en ce moment de la possibilité d'un déversement majeur d'eau usée. Ça serait au cours après l'élection. Mais si vous étiez ministre fédéral de l'Environnement, est-ce que vous stoppez cette menace?
En fait, juste pour être clair, je suis en train de postuler pour l'emploi du Premier ministre du Canada. Mais si je suis mon ministre de l'Environnement, il y a fort à parier qu'il y a quelqu'un ici dans cette pièce qui va jouer un rôle important là-dedans. La personne que je nommerais responsable de l'environnement appliquerait rigoureusement les lois au niveau fédéral, qui est responsable, rappelons-le, d'abord et avant tout, pour les eaux qui transitent entre les provinces, y compris le Saint-Laurent. Alors, lorsqu'il y a eu, par exemple, à Montréal, sur le site d'Expo, il y avait un stationnement le long du fleuve et ça suintait des PVC. C'était le fédéral qui était responsable de ça. Donc, on va assumer nos responsabilités. Vous me connaissez. J'ai une historique fière d'appliquer rigoureusement les lois. Je les applique de la même manière à tout le monde. Mais je peux vous garantir une chose, que ce soit là ou ailleurs, le fédéral va être un partenaire fiable, long terme, pour avoir de l'argent pour de l'infrastructure, pour avoir des usines de traitement des eaux usées. Et l'idée qu'en 2015, on va lâcher des milliards de litres d'eau usée crue dans le Saint-Laurent et dans ses écosystèmes, c'est tellement saugrenu que c'est évident qu'un gouvernement du NPD ne le permettrait pas.
Deuxième question. Votre position sur l'accord de libre-échange transpacifique.
Oui.
Vous avez fait tellement d'efforts depuis des mois pour vous ramener au centre, aller chercher une ratisser plus large. Qu'est-ce que vous dites à un électeur, parce que c'est ce que j'entends sur le terrain, qui dit je voulais voter NPD, j'aime le programme économique, mais je ne peux pas comprendre qu'un chef de parti soit prêt à déchirer une entente sans l'avoir même vue, et qui bénéficie certaines industries. On est dans l'Ouest, vous savez très bien que ça profite à certaines industries, ça a été applaudi hier. Qu'est-ce que vous répondez à ces électeurs?
Moi, ce que je réponds, Tamara, c'est la chose suivante. C'est que le NPD est résolument en faveur de plus d'échanges avec nos partenaires. Mais le public a le droit d'avoir un gouvernement qui va se tenir debout pour le Canada lors de ces négociations. Moi, je vais vous dire que quand j'ai su hier, lorsque j'ai été informé, parce qu'on a eu une séance d'information avec les hauts dirigeants en droit en matière de commerce international, ils ont dit que le Canada était prêt à signer un accord qui allait tuer des dizaines de milliers de bons emplois dans le secteur manufacturier. Moi, je dis que c'est un non-sens. On a déjà perdu 400 000 bons emplois dans le secteur manufacturier pendant que M. Harper est au pouvoir. Est-ce qu'on peut arrêter là? Ou est-ce qu'il veut vraiment complètement démanteler des secteurs entiers de notre économie? M. Harper a fait des mauvais choix. Il a le pire bilan de création d'emplois de tout premier ministre depuis la Deuxième Guerre mondiale. Il a le pire bilan économique depuis la grande crise des années 30. Il y a 300 000 chômeurs de plus aujourd'hui. Et ça, c'est juste au niveau de l'emploi. Regardons maintenant son bilan en matière de commerce international. M. Harper se vante d'avoir signé plus que 50 ententes. Il pense que cette entente-là s'inscrit dans le droit fil des autres, que c'est bon pour l'économie et pour l'échange. La preuve que c'est faux, c'est qu'on a le pire déficit commercial de l'histoire du Canada cette année. The question was, how can the NDP stand up now and say that it disagrees with Mr. Harper's secret negotiation in Atlanta and this deal that was negotiated with 2 weeks to go in Calgary? And the answer for the NDP is simple. Mr. Harper has not stood up for Canadians and Canadian jobs. He's willing to sacrifice in the run-up to an election in order, he thinks, to help himself. He's willing to sacrifice not only tens of thousands of jobs, but tens of thousands of Canadian families. And the NDP is going to stand up foursquare in opposition to Stephen Harper. And it's worth bearing in mind that a little bit like his argument with regard to jobs. If you listen to Stephen Harper spin the story, things are going great in the job department, but there's a couple of problems for him. The CIBC, one of Canada's largest banks, says that the quality of job being created today is the worst in a generation. It's part-time, precarious, low-paid jobs. That's Stephen Harper's legacy. We've lost 400,000 manufacturing jobs on his watch, and 300,000 more unemployed today than when he took office than when the crisis hit in 2008. Mr. Harper's job plan has been such a complete and utter failure that Stephen Harper has, as Prime Minister, the worst job creation record of any Prime Minister since the Second World War. He has the worst economic record of any Prime Minister since the 1930s. Let's look specifically at trade, because Stephen Harper's master argument is these trade deals are great. They create lots of jobs long term, and they're good for the economy. Here's the result. He boasts of having signed more than 50 trade deals. This year, Canada will have the worst trade deficit in its history. His plan on trade is not working either. It's time to stop selling out Canadian families and Canadian jobs.
Yeah, that's right.
The Dairy Association says it can essentially live with TPP because they believe that the dairy supply management has basically survived with this deal. Do you still oppose this deal? Because that's what you've been arguing all along, that it has not been protected.
We still oppose this deal. Yeah, we're very clear on that. We think that the deal is wrong. It is an important breach in our supply management system. It's the Trojan horse that they're trying to bring into supply management. It's only a few percent here, and it's only a few percent under the European deal. And after all, what about the milk protein isolates that are being brought in as a complete way around all of the tariff classifications for Canada? No, the dairy industry knows that Stephen Harper's not protecting the border. They know that this is a breach in supply management. They've been told that there's going to be compensation. I would suggest that they go and talk to the fishers in Newfoundland and Labrador and ask them what happened when Stephen Harper promised them hundreds of millions of dollars in compensation when they gave up their production and their refining rights. Mr. Harper completely reneged on his promise to them. I don't trust Stephen Harper, and anybody who's ever dealt with him doesn't either.
Hi, I'm sure you have, like I have, been seeing the polls lately, and things, you're not out of it, but things aren't looking all that great. I want to know how the TPP and how your opposition to it fits into what you've got to do in the remaining 2 weeks of this campaign. Do you really think that you could, how are you going to convince the majority of Canadians, or at least large numbers of voters, of the rightness of your cause, and is that one of your objectives in this?
You know, the Canadians do know that they can trust me to stand up for them, for their jobs, for their communities, and they can trust the NDP that they've known for a long time. I've been in public life for over 35 years, and I've always stood on questions of principle. And I've always worked with Don Davies, who's been doing an absolutely amazing job as our spokesperson on these issues, and we've opened up more than we ever had. The NDP came out, for example, in favor of the trade deal with Korea because we had time to study it. We were able to conclude that it was going to be better in the interests of Canada, despite opposition from some quarters. That's the approach we take. We look for reciprocity, an even playing field. Is the partner a democracy? Does it respect rights? Is it respectful of the environment? Does it have tough rules? Does it respect labor? I don't want economic dumping, but I don't want social dumping or environmental dumping either. I don't want to trade with a country where everything is produced by using the air, the soil, and the water as a universal free dumping ground. I want to make sure that if we're dealing with somebody, it's on an even playing field. That's why I was able to support the trade deal with Korea. So this notion that somehow the NDP is anti-trade is just false. But we're smart on trade as well. And Stephen Harper is an opportunist on trade. He's willing to sell out Canadian families. Canadian farming families. He's willing to sell out Canadian families where the livelihood is gained in the auto sector 2 weeks out from an election because he thinks it's good for him. I'm always going to do what I think is good for Canadian families.
Yeah!
Follow-up to my colleague's question here about the BC dairy farmers saying they essentially can live with this.
Sure.
If they're saying essentially they can live with this, are you not stoking fears that aren't there?
Well, you know, we've been talking to a lot of people who are in the supply management sector. They were worried when the first breach was created with the European trade deal. They knew that was going to mean as thousands and thousands of tons of European cheeses were going to be able to